So we're making Mythmatch, which is a Greek myth merge game about the power of community over capitalism. And one of the things that's really strange about making an anti-capitalist game is that as soon as you start bringing in mechanics from other game genres and other games, you accidentally create all the conditions and motivations of capitalism, and the specter of capitalism just comes reeking back into your game. So I want to go over 5 different ideas that we have to try to tell an anti-capitalist storyline in Mythmatch, and we'll talk about whether they worked or didn't work. So the first one is Greek mythology. So we had the idea that in Greek mythology there's these 12 gods of the pantheon, and they have all the power, and they sort of treat the mortals as their playthings. And our version of that is that the game takes place in 2 spaces. Up in Mount Olympus, where everything is a high-intensity minigame that's really frustrating but kind of fun. But then down in the mortal realm, it's much more of a village sim where you can take your time and there's persistence and you get to know the mortals and you build relationships. And this worked out really, really well for us, actually. I think that juxtaposition has played really well, and we've been watching some of the recent playtest videos, and I can always tell when someone's playing up in Mount Olympus because there's lots of swearing, or I can hear if they're playing in the mortal realm because I can always hear like, oh, aw, look at that. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, how's this work? So yeah, I think that worked great. You have 2 very different spaces that feel very, very different to play. So now that we knew that we were going to do the mortal realm, we thought, okay, we'll do some NPC quests to make you feel connected to them and how you're helping the NPCs. So I put this in our first build. I sent it out to a bunch of playtester friends, and every video that came back, I had thought there was about 10 minutes of gameplay, and every video that came back was anywhere from 30 to 2 or 3 hours. And I was amazed, and I thought, oh, great, we've really nailed this. People are having a lot of fun with it, but this was actually a case of accidental capitalism. Once I watched all the videos back, everyone was just trying to get as many points as they could. They didn't really care about what the NPCs wanted or why they wanted it. They just knew that if they give the NPCs the items they're asking for, they're going to get more. And so you could tell that they just really just wanted the points to go back up to Olympus to become more powerful and fight the other gods, which was not the motivation of our game. So what we ended up having to do for the quest was push the belief points kind of to the background and focus on what new things the NPCs were unlocking, what skills they were unlocking, what buildings they were building in the community, and really focus on what investment you were making in the community from doing the quest rather than just collecting points. So the next thing we tried was merge mechanics. So in merge mechanics, you basically take 3 of anything, you combine them up, and it becomes something stronger. And I thought that this was a really great analogy for the power of community. I thought, oh, you take a large number of small things, and you keep combining them until you make something very, very powerful at the end. And this ended up working out pretty well, but not for the reason I thought. So I think that high analogy kind of went over everyone's head. But what was really interesting about merge mechanics is that everything takes space on the board. So you really can't have someone that hoards tons of resources because it takes up too much space. And so inevitably, you don't hoard resources, you always spend them and reinvest them back in the community. And I thought that was great. And I think the other really nice thing for me is that we don't need numbers in the mortal realm because inherently merge mechanics are a counting system. So everything is a power of 3, and every level up is the next power of 3. And so in the mortal realm, you almost never see any numbers unless they're pertaining back to Mount Olympus. And I thought that was a really great, nice side effect about not being able to hoard and not having tons of numbers that you're constantly trying to make go up. Okay, so the fourth idea was that in the mortal realm, all the NPCs were gathering all the resources and that kind of stuff. And I thought, you know what? It's not fair that the player is just not pitching in sufficiently. So I thought, why don't I give the player some of the same abilities as the NPCs so they can pitch in and help and gather resources and all that kind of stuff. And this ended up being another case of weirdly accidental capitalism. It was really surprising watching the playtests from this because what happened was once the player could do everything they wanted to do, they didn't need the NPCs anymore, so they completely ignored them. To the point where we had one playtester that basically stole all the food from the mortals so they could never have the energy to do any work, and they just played the whole game by themselves, not thinking about community, not making connections to the mortals at all. So what we ended up having to do was take away most of the player abilities, especially anything that would overlap with something that an NPC could do. So the set of abilities that the NPCs can do and that the player can do are completely separate now. And the fifth idea that we had was minigames. So now that we took a bunch of the player abilities away, we're like, what does the player do? And we had the minigames up in Mount Olympus, and we thought, what if there was something that was a little bit demanding about that? And so we added a minigame where the smith, who is the mother of a young child, in order for her to do any crafting, you have to watch the child and keep her distracted to make sure that she doesn't run into the dangerous forge. And this was a huge success, and this actually was a key point in the development of the project because it really highlighted to me this theme, the theme of helping people in the way they actually need to be helped, rather than, some kind of way of helping people that looks good on you or as glory for you or as exposure or whatever. Like, you actually help people materially in the way that they need to be helped. And I thought in particular it was really nice to see an immortal like Artemis have to do something as mundane as stacking blocks for a small child. I thought that was a really nice contrast, and it really captured a lot of the ideas that we'd been working on since that moment. So yeah, those are 5 of the ideas that we had for Mythmatch on how to capture the idea of community over capitalism, and some of them did and didn't work, but I think in the end, it was a really great learning experience, and the game's so much better for it. And if you'd like, the demo is available on Steam, and you can wishlist it now.